I'm guessing you're going to have to do overnight to know what the car is going to do on the top versus on the bottom.
Two drivers that are a little more comfortable than others are the ones that have won so far in the playoffs. And it started off with Darlington and the 5 of Kyle Larson. Went out there and dominated. Got the first win of the playoffs. That made sure that he would advance into the round of 12. All smiles for Kyle Larson, and right now he's the fastest here at Bristol as well at a 15:18 for his fastest lap.
I don't think that's any surprise. He loves this place and the challenge that it presents, and you know what a great night to. Well, he didn't like that lap right there to get down in it. But if you try to attack this, Jeff, you're going to miss it occasionally. But I was going to talk about Darlington. How great it is, you kind of get 2 victories in one. You win the Southern 500, and oh yeah, you move on into playoffs. So that's a pretty special night.
It's the bonus. And it happened for Tyler Reddick as well when he won at Kansas last week. The bonus is you advance. Ross Chastain, as you look down the list, he's currently 8th as far as the playoff standings. 18 points above that cut line. Chastain right now 8th as far as speed as well.
Yeah, I believe he was one of the drivers that did a tire test here. This is a different right side tire. We heard Kim say that, and so it's supposed to actually get more wear, which means it'll probably have a little bit more grip to begin with. But you know, try to make things to where these things become more difficult the more laps you put on the tires, and so you always wonder, did that help? I can think back to a few tire tests back in the dark ages that we were able to go to, and I think there were things that you were able to learn, even though most of the time you're not changing your car, but it gives you a lot of insight as to what the tires may do and what they actually come back with. Kim?
And DJ confirmed they do think it helped. In fact, so much so they brought it up to me last week. I talked to crew chief Phil Surgeon back at Kansas, and he brought up this Bristol tire test they were able to do, said they learned a lot and were excited about this weekend.
Ross Chastain a year ago, I don't think anyone will ever forget, right before Phoenix, the way that he had to race at Martinsville to get into that championship 4 at Phoenix was that move right there.
Look at that move.
Still don't look real.
It's a video game move.
Almost a year later, still a question whether that's reality or not. It's just insane what he was willing to do. The fact
Whoa.
The fact that it worked out, I think that's,
Whoa.
you know, that's surprising. Because if there wasn't a wreck, there wasn't something that happened bad. He was willing to throw it out there and made it work. And DJ, I gotta believe they're pretty happy with their start to the playoffs. I mean, they were struggling coming into the playoffs. They put some decent races together, and you know, just before the playoffs and now they put some decent races together with reasonable speed. Not the speed we saw last year at the height of their success, but better and closer to the guys that have been winning the races.
Yeah, I think definitely what we've seen in these first 2 weeks of racing in the playoffs, definitely a different team and one capable of moving through a couple of rounds.
Already it's Larson, Busher, Wallace, Gibbs, and Bell. They're the fastest of Group A in this practice session. Still a little over 12 and a half minutes to go. Many Tennessee football fans that have enjoyed games, well, normally at Tennessee's home stadium. But what about when Tennessee came right here to Bristol Motor Speedway and took on Virginia Tech? What an event that was right here at the world's fastest half mile, which was a pretty fast football field. Well, tomorrow,
NBC.
in West Lafayette, Indiana, will be ready to rock as the 2-0 Syracuse Orange visit the 1-1 Purdue Boilermakers. It's Big Ten Saturday Night Football on NBC and Peacock. Coverage at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Hey, Rick, so that quarterback for Tennessee, Josh Dobbs, that played when they played here, he is now quarterbacking the Arizona Cardinals.
It was
started this year.
Yeah, it was just
Is that football Bristol? Let me find them.
And then right with the NFL.
Well, when he talks to other guys in the NFL, he can talk about playing at a racetrack, and they can't say that many of them say that they did that.
That's the interesting thing about Bristol. 5-car Larson, he was rolling off 1550s, pretty much the fastest car on track. Ross Chastain pulled out in front of him, and immediately the 5-car lost 0.2 of a second. So that right there shows you why it's difficult to pass. He now has backed off the 1 car, giving himself some space, starting to move around the racetrack a little bit to see if he can find a little bit of upper groove. Doesn't have any grip. He intentionally slowed down to intentionally give himself a little bit more clean air. And this is with, there's 10 cars on track right now? Tomorrow night's going to be 36. So that explains why everybody gets frustrated. And then when he backed off, he immediately picked up a 1/10.5 of a second.
So you had mentioned, everyone running near the bottom right now, a one-groove racetrack. Were you a fan of the one-groove racetrack that this track used to be, where you'd have to push somebody out of the way to pass them?
Well, I wasn't very good with pushing people out of the way, but I thought the intensity was awesome. But look, this race is great too. I mean, the newer, it's not new anymore, but the multiple groove Bristol, it's fun as well. It's a different kind of fun, but it's great racing in its own right.
Yeah, I think having to decide, you were talking about this earlier, when exactly do you start moving up and changing that groove, and you go to the middle and then eventually to the very top of the racetrack? So seeing who's able to do that and start it a little bit sooner, make speed there, and maybe that helps them get track position that they didn't have earlier in the race around the bottom. But yeah, around the bottom, when we did this and when this place was asphalt, I mean, it was a grind and it was an intense race. You knew through the whole thing, but we loved it. The fans loved it, especially whenever it got to be a little bit of pushing and shoving.
A little. The King loved it. Yeah, the King loved it. And King here, watching on.
Yeah, he didn't really have to push him out of the way. They were having to try to catch him, push him out of the way.
They're tracking him down.
From watching, you see he's 3rd fastest overall. A good speed taken off. Currently does not have the pace of Larson. Larson's sitting there running 1560s, which I'm not sure anybody has the pace of Larson. And Bubba's a solid 10.5, 2/10 off of that.
You always look at that and wonder, though, when you talk about Larson like that, where is it that he's making his speed over these others? Is it a situation that, okay, as long as he's out front and he's able to carry that speed through the center of the corner, let's just say that's where he's making up his time over his competitors, that his car turns, rotates, he's able to get in the gas. But when it comes time to have to make a pass, because you're not always... Kel Yorver, I think, maybe led a lot of laps here a time or two, and others maybe probably rusty. But at some point in time, you're going to find yourself having to make passes. Is your car set up to do that? Is that where you can make the time?
That's one thing, DJ, that you always struggle with. If you're Kyle Larson right now, you're beating everybody on corner entry. That's great, right? When you're by yourself and you can drive in the corner a little deeper than somebody, there's some real speed.